Hello, guys, and welcome back to JK Creates. As promised, I wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the models I've painted for my Chaos Warband and some of the techniques I've been trying to teach myself along the way. These aren't the first models I've ever painted. I briefly played while I was in middle school, and then I fully jumped back into the hobby right before 9th edition 40K kicked off. But a lot of my hobby time during that period was spent on the gaming side and almost completely ignoring painting. A lot of gray models. Over the next 5 years, I got more and more comfortable actually putting some paint on models. And although I'm better than when I started, it wasn't until late last year that I promised myself that I would actively pursue pushing to try and become better at painting. And that leads me to my warband, the Ashen Hand. The idea I had in mind for these guys was a very dirty and dingy cream color with bronze trim and heavy weathering, something very similar to the palette hand Death Guard scheme. So I did some research on different techniques I could use to get the effect I was looking for, and that led me to delving into oil paint washes and reductive painting. Oil paint washes is just taking some oil, not acrylic paints, thinning them down in mineral spirits, and applying them to the model. And after some amount of time, using a Q-tip or a makeup sponge soaked in mineral spirits to wipe away the excess. And that should leave the oil paint sunken into the recesses and tinging whatever layer of paint that they've touched without that coffee stain effect that you typically get with heavy-handed application of those GW washes. Better results that require less precision is exactly the type of skill that I wanted to get better at, so it was a no-brainer. The test models and test run for an oil wash were these Chaos Cultists. These models have already been featured in the first reel I ever posted, and as I explained in that video, it was a very straightforward process. I blocked in the colors of the robes, the guns, melee weapons, and a few nicks and knacks on the models, and then I mixed up my oil wash. I didn't take any photos of what they looked like prior to the oil wash or even what they looked like while I was letting the oil set, but after about 2 or so hours, I came back with a Q-tip and liberally removed oil from the areas that I wanted to be lighter. I was pretty happy with the results, and this was a kind of proof of concept that the paint scheme I had in mind could make for a good army scheme. The next model, or models I should say, that I painted after this were the Dark Apostle and his little dudes that follow him around. It was basically the same exact process of blocking in the main colors of the model, with the addition of having to get my first taste of what painting chaos trim felt like. Although it wasn't the most enjoyable thing I've ever painted, it definitely was a good warm up for what would come next. This model was also my first attempt at OSL, object source lighting, seeing as how he has flames coming off of his tome and the candelabra on his backpack, as well as his little friend carrying, I don't even know what is that called, a brazier. You guys can let me know what that is. But after I'd painted that, that was me attempting to also get better at highlighting. I've really seldomly tried to highlight, or at least when I've tried it in the past, I guess I'm using colors that don't contrast well enough. So the highlights never actually showed up that much, or I was being kind of sloppy with my placement and not being careful enough with the actual, technique to catch the edges of stuff. And it would kind of just turn into fat globs of paint on, what had already existed. After that, the next additions to my warband were these 10 Chaos Chosen. Going from one model with trim to paint to 10 was definitely a big jump for me, but I somehow managed to get all these guys painted up in about a week or so. I was still playing around with the ratio of oil that I was putting into each wash, and the mix for this batch, I opted to use more green paint in the mix, and I also let it sit for about a whole day as opposed to the hour or two I had been doing with the previous models. I definitely feel as though I pulled a bit too much paint off with the makeup sponge on a few of the models and not enough on others, but all in all, I'm happy with the level of grime on these guys. This was also another attempt at OSL, but this time with an airbrush, which I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I do think that I might come back to these models in the future and attempt to clean up a few of the details and highlight their guns and armor, but since this was my largest batch of Chaos Marines painted to date, I'm taking some time to decompress from it all and opting to paint some other projects. As for what's next for my warband, I've already got some Legionnaires and Possessed slated to be added, but that will be for another video that I'll update you guys on soon. But for anyone still watching at this point, I'd like to say thank you, and I appreciate you tolerating my shoddy camera work and my editing skills, but I definitely promise that this will be something that I continue to improve at. If there's anything more you'd like to hear me speak on in regards to my learning process with the oil washes or even the OSL or anything else for that matter, please leave a comment down below. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. And I'll be back here with another video in the near future. Peace.